Good morning, everybody. I would like to call this meeting of the Development and Property Committee to order on Tuesday, March 5th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. As we gather this morning, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the First Nations. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history. We're extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Has roll call been taken, Evelyn?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and we have quorum.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, then we'll move to the adoption of the minutes of February the 13th, 2024, and I'll need a mover and a seconder. Moved by the councillor from Township of Horton, seconded by councillor from Greater Madawaska. Any additions, corrections, or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. So this morning we're pleased to have two delegations. Our first delegation, I'm going to have David Waibu introduce, and I'll invite him to proceed right now. Thank you, David.
Good morning, Chair, and through you, members of the committee. At this committee last year in February, Economic Development Services reported about how we and the county's Forestry Division were working with EcoStrat Inc. to undertake a bioeconomy development opportunity zone rating for the region and as it relates to the use of surplus roundwood and the development of other innovative uses for forest-related biomass products. With this initiative now complete and our rating secured, this morning we have a delegation from EcoStrat to make a presentation through Zoom on the final report and to answer any questions. To that end, I have the pleasure to introduce to you Aaron Garswood, head of the BDO Zone Initiative, who oversees the marketing and promotion of the BDO Zone to potential developers and investors globally, and Marcin Lewandowski, Senior Director of Operations and Risk, who coordinated the research team and wrote the report.
Thank you, David. So yes, I'll invite you to please go ahead with your presentation.
Very good. Good morning, everyone. I will share my screen and hopefully this works. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yep, we can see
Very good. So this is quite of course, a big report, a complicated report. I do have 15 minutes to my understanding to present this. What I plan to include in this presentation is an overview of the Bioeconomy Development Opportunity Zone program, the BDO Zone program or ratings, what they are, how they work, why do we even have them? I plan to discuss that in about half of my time, and the other half I'll focus on just the main key findings in this area, and then we'll have 15 minutes for a Q&A. Aaron here will be able to answer some questions with regards to the program itself, its successes to date, the number of BDO zones published already, and so on and so forth. So let me go ahead and quickly talk again about the program. So what the BDO Zone Initiative is, it's a certification program which allows project developers and project investors all across the world, anybody who has money set aside or interest in the bioeconomy, broadly speaking, to quickly recognize or quickly see areas that are potentially good for project development. There are two main variables when an investor or a project developer is deciding on an area. One is, of course, access to what we call biomass. So those are raw materials for bioenergy, biochemical, bioplastics, biofuels production. And the other, of course, is infrastructure. So access to roads, access to shipping routes, and so on and so forth. So we look at both of these areas as part of this rating. The rating itself, it's designed the same way a credit risk rating is. The language is the same. The methodology is very similar. The actual rating, so AA or A or triple B, is also the same. And the reason is simple: is that everybody understands that language. Anybody who deals with investments and credits and develops projects knows what those numbers mean, knows what that scale, the rating scale, does. So we are taking on those methodologies for these BDO zone reports. I quickly went over this. One thing I do want to add is the methodology that's used to investigate access to biomass and the risks related to a particular region is based on a published standard. That standard, it's called the Biomass Supply Chain Risk Standard, was first developed in the United States with the Idaho National Laboratory. Our company was very much involved in development of that standard. And then a few years later, it's been recognized by the Canadian Standards Association. It is now a national Canadian standard for biomass supply chain risk. So when we do the investigation, we're very transparent in our methods, and those methods are themselves very transparent based on those standards. And when you read the report, or if you read the report, you'll see that the report actually follows that protocol. And what that protocol is, it's a set of questions. It's actually over 70 different what we call risk indicators, but really questions that we answer in order to make sure that we look at every aspect of the biomass supply chain in this region. So at the end of the day, what these tools do, the report, when I say a tool, the report is actually a tool to attract investment and have projects built, bio-based manufacturing plants built, and of course, provide for economic development and create jobs in a given area. This is a quick look at the different ratings and the scale. The scale, I wanted to show it just so everybody understands what those letters mean, and that it's also, again, a very transparent way of measuring risk in a given area. So the AAA rating is the highest. The, I guess, lowest investment grade would be triple B or maybe double B, and again, that's it's a flexible definition there, and very high quality is double A. Quickly, again, just to go over this one slide, I did touch on this. We look at 3 different pillars in terms of these BDO zone ratings, and what they show is the access to feedstock being, again, the raw materials. In this case, we're looking at low-grade, small diameter wood, oftentimes referred to as pulpwood. So that's the raw material that's been traditionally used by pulp and paper industry. Supply chain strength, so anything that allows that material to end up at a facility, that's, for example, logging infrastructure, access to workforce, that is anything to do with environmental regulations, and so on and so forth. And then infrastructure, self-explanatory, access to transportation, logistics, but even house prices. We also take that into account to attract potential workforce. So I'm happy to announce, and probably it's not an announcement because this report, at least it's in its draft format, has gone out. But we've rated Renfrew County with a AA rating. So what this means is this. The BDO zone is defined by a 130-kilometer drive distance around a center point. There's always a center point for a BDO zone. In this case, it's Pembroke. We've chosen Pembroke because of its the forest industry is right around Pembroke, so those green dots show the sawmills, but also infrastructure is there. We believe that it has a positive infrastructure profile. And this is how the BDO zone looks like. A big portion of it goes right into the Ottawa Valley Forest, but there's a portion of it that goes across the river into Quebec. Part of it is in Algonquin Park as well. So we look at all of those, all of that entire region. I'm trying to keep the time, but if I'm going over, please do let me know. So each BDO zone is rated for a specific quantity and pricing. These are the parameters, we call them, that any developer always looks at, right? So for each project, whether you produce biochemicals or produce bioenergy, biofuels, you know what your target price is for feedstock. And you also know how much you need in order to make your facility scalable, economic. And then so when there's a website created that shows all the BDOs that have been published, and those variables are shown right away. So if I'm a project developer and I know how much I need and I know what my pricing range is, I can actually filter through these BDO zones and then look at the ones that are relevant to me. So for this one particular, we've identified that there's 400,000 green metric tons per year of pulpwood at $50 to $60 per green metric ton. Now, there's much more, which we make very clear in the report. However, there's this much at what we consider low risk, so at that AA risk, and at this price. If you were to increase the price significantly, we could obviously get more because you can transport more into this area. But again, for the purposes of this report, we've rated 400,000 green metric tons per year of pulpwood. So that's low risk material. And on top of it, 85,000 green metric tons per year of sawmill chip. So that's the residual that comes off the sawmills. Again, there's much more. There's actually over, if I remember correctly, 200,000 tons that's generated. But a lot of it goes to existing markets. So we do want to. There's actually 400,000 tons of which Roseburg and Pembroke takes more than half. So we do account for that as well. Here is when I talked about all the different risk indicators. This is just a screenshot of what they look like. Every single indicator, there's about 70 of them, is looked at, researched, described, and then a score is assigned. There's a scoring system here, and there's a notching system, just like in the credit risk rating, and the final score. So I just put in this one, just a little screenshot, just so everybody understands the amount of work and analysis that goes into these ratings. I talked about additional quantities that are likely available. The big asset for this region is that the forests are sustainably managed and certified. That oftentimes, especially by companies that are whose products are very much regulated by that, this is a great benefit. And the main risks that we've identified here is the logging capacity, which we think is shrinking, aging workforce, and procurement of pulpwood from private forests. So there is a lot of uncertainty in terms of what's out there in private forests and whether the forest landowners are willing to sell large quantities of pulpwood. I do want to make a last point, which is that this rating is projected for a 20-year period. So when we say logging capacity or aging workforce can be a risk, we're not saying it's necessarily currently the risk, but we know this can become a risk over a 20-year period. And why 20 years is because an average project is about 20 years. A lifespan of an average project is about 20 years. if someone can let me know how much more time I have to finish this presentation. I have 2 more slides. This just delves deeper into the specifics of the rating, but not sure if I have enough time.
We have about 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. Thank you. So yeah, I'll be concise here. We've talked about the definition of the BDO zone. Each BDO zone out there is almost exactly the same in terms of its geographic area, and that's why we were very specific with that geographic area definition. We know pulp and paper mills, for example, have been procuring wood from larger areas, but because these BDO zones serve as promotional tools for regions, we want to make sure that we can benchmark one against the other. So that's why we keep it at 130 kilometers. We know that there's about 480,000 tons of pulpwood over a long time that's available, of which we consider 400,000 low risk. I talked about this. But there's also a glut of pulpwood in the forest right now. There have been closures of mills over the past 20 years, and really the most recent closures are probably most impactful to the region. Now, Trenton stopped buying wood, which, by the way, isn't yet reflected in this report. So there is a glut of wood that's resulted from the lack of demand. And we also make that very clear here. And again, sawmill residuals, 10 sawmills, which is actually a large number of sawmills. A lot of them are large sawmills and reliable sawmills. They've been in the market for a long time, and which means that there's a reliable supply of sawmill residuals and specifically wood chip to any potential project. And generally speaking, there is a need for a pulpwood market. That's not surprising to anybody local. There's been, like I said, pulp and paper mills that have shut down. It's very difficult for sawmills to get the larger timber that they need economically if they can't cut and sell pulpwood. So everybody has vested interest in creating that market for that low-grade, small diameter tree. And then, like I said, positive infrastructure profile. I go over major risks. What we're finding is that it is the workforce, it is the logging infrastructure that poses most risk. How do we look at it? So it's more and more difficult to buy equipment. The younger generations don't want to go into forestry that much. All the stories that probably everybody has heard in the region. But we do, when we assess risk, we also provide for mitigators. So we know mills in Quebec, for instance, have been facing the same problems. And we know what they've been doing is they've been vertically integrating. So if insurance costs are high for individual family-owned logging companies, we know you can mitigate the lack of those small companies with vertically integrating your logging operations into the mill's processes. And that's been actually being thought through quite seriously among project developers, because we see this problem everywhere, not only in Ontario, not only in Quebec, but also across the United States, where again, there's less and less logging infrastructure, also transport infrastructure, and just young generations don't want to go into the forest. And then, so what companies have been doing is setting up their own equipment, buying up their own equipment, and setting up their own crews in the forest. They can then put the workers on salaries as opposed to have them as contractors, which incentivizes people to go into the forest. So, like I said, there's the high risk of not having enough logging capacity, and there's the mitigation strategy on how to address this. And that's, again, being addressed and quantified in the report itself. And pulpwood from private forests. We know there's a lot of pulpwood in the private forests. We don't know exactly how much, so we make broad assumptions. But we also know the landowner profile is changing, which means that it's no longer a landowner that manages the land for timber optimizes timber production. Oftentimes, it's a hobby landowner, or maybe somebody that just bought the land for recreational purposes. Again, it's a very uncertain area for us because there's no good data sets. It's all anecdotal. So the way we approach this is, okay, if we see uncertainty, we calculate that uncertainty into the rating itself. And then that's exactly what we did. And then in order to account for that uncertainty, we lowered that number in terms of what's available from private forest. So I believe we arrived at about 190,000 tons available from private forests in terms of pulpwood. Again, knowing that that number is likely high, but when communicating this to investors, we always want to take the most pessimistic, conservative approach. And finally, the local regulations, or provincial, I should say, like SERA, for instance, does pose risk to timber harvesting operations. We talk about it in the report, but like I said, we also believe strongly that the 400,000 tons that this report is rated for can be easily accessed at low risk, despite these regulations. So that is my presentation. Again, now happy to answer questions, whether on the technical aspect of the report or on the programs aspect. So maybe let me finish with this, is that this report isn't designed to be a due diligence report for a project. What it's designed to be is an economic development tool, almost a promotional tool for regions. And so Aaron could probably speak more to it. This report will go out to anybody who's thinking about developing bioprojects. It will be distributed widely internationally, and anybody who has any interest can read this report, whether just the first 3 pages in the summary to see if whatever we find aligns with their needs, or can read the whole thing and have it as maybe a kind of a phase 1 due diligence report. But again, the next step, typically what happens in cases like this is this report goes out, the interest actually spikes quite quickly, and then the local economic development office, just the phone starts ringing, like I said, quite quickly with questions about the details and so on and so forth. So let me stop here and take questions. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewandowski, and it certainly is a very, very detailed report. And I'll open it up to the committee for questions. Councillor from Town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you for your presentation. And I understand that most of this was centered around the lumber industry and feedstock based on wood chips and sawdust. But I did see in your report a couple mentions about feedstock in terms of food waste. So this is a bit of a selfish question. We have a new project in Petawawa at our waste treatment plant. It's a net zero project where we're taking our waste and then feedstock, but the feedstock is food waste, turning it into renewable natural gas, which then powers a combined heat and power plant and creates electricity. So noticing that you mentioned food waste feedstock a couple of times, we are getting set to flip the switch, and we're always looking for sources of feedstock from food waste. So does your organization, would you facilitate the search for this or know where sources can be found?
The quick answer is yes, but let me maybe nuance that. So this report in particular speaks only to forest biomass, and in particular to pulpwood and sawmill chip. We did look at forest residuals and bark and other streams from forestry biomass, and we decided there's just enough markets for that, so it will be higher risk. So this report is really meant, and the analysis around forestry biomass, and goes out to anybody that wants to build a forestry biomass-oriented project. Now, these reports, the methodology itself is also designed for food waste. Our company actually does this for food waste quite a lot. As a matter of fact, EcoStrat, as a company, most of our business is food waste related business, RNG related business. So So I hope that answers. So maybe let me put it this way: there could be another BDO zone we can talk about. BDO zones are feedstock specific. So firstly we define the feedstock, and then we define the location, and then those are the two variables. So this one is feedstock specific to forestry biomass. We can have a BDO zone, which is food waste specific.
Yeah, I'll be about 2 minutes late. Yeah.
And but otherwise, if there's a project already, our company has been involved in conducting due diligence and helping raise funds for food waste related projects. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'll be in touch.
Great.
Are there any other questions from committee? I see none. So once again, thank you very much for your presentation. And if we require additional information, we'll be in touch.
Very good. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
So now I will ask Ms. Rose if she could introduce our next delegation from Heiderman Sawmill.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased that we have Chris Heideman with us today of Laverne Heideman & Sons, which is a third-generation family-owned and operated forestry company that's experienced significant growth in the last couple of years through 2 acquisitions and a major sawmill expansion. Chris is the Vice President of Heideman & Sons, and he's also sits on the Executive Committee of the Board of Directors of the Ontario Forest Industry Association. And has spent time in many other forest management planning processes in the area. Recently, Heidemans has partnered with Harvest Bioindustrial and Queen's University to determine the feasibility of producing biofuels at their sawmill site, which relates very heavily to the presentation you just heard. So they're putting that to action already. So looking forward to hearing from Chris. Thanks.
Thanks, Lacey. Yeah, so I guess it's timely with the preceding presentation, and then also, there's a lot of negative news about our industry right now out there with the closure of Trenton, Espanola, Terrace Bay. But hopefully I'll leave you today with some optimism and some excitement for the future, because the future is very bright for us. So yeah, so Lacey already did the introduction, so I can skip that part. I think it's important, and I don't want to break protocol, but you're welcome to interrupt me at any time during this if you have any questions, because I want to make sure there's a kind of a distinction. There's a lot of terminology thrown around between biomass, pulpwood, sawmill residues, and it's all used kind of loosely and stuff. And it's important that we distinguish the problem we have in our area here is a pulpwood issue. You can use the term biomass, pulpwood, I think they're fairly interchangeable. We don't have a sawmill residue issue right now. Up north, there's a sawmill residue issue, less so of a pulpwood issue, and even in Quebec it varies. So it varies by region. But I just want to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page about what our problem is here in this area, from my perspective anyways. And so sawmills, at our sawmill site in Eganville or any of the mills in the valley, we make lumber, chips, sawdust, bark, and shavings. And we are extremely fortunate to have Roseburg here in our area. Without Roseburg, there is no sawmill industry. That's just the hard fact of it. They consume our sawmill residues. Our shavings don't go there, but the chips and sawdust all go to Roseburg, and they sustain the sawmill industry in the Ottawa Valley. Our problem is pulpwood or biomass. So basically any type of wood that we can't turn into lumber at a sawmill. So if it doesn't make a saw log, so Trenton closed. Trenton consumed about 120,000 ton a year, just to give some perspective. So not large in this grand scheme of things, but it was enough to send us over that cliff on our pulpwood issue. We've been talking for years that we've had a pulpwood issue, and we've been getting by. But now Trenton is kind of the straw that's going to break the camel's back in that market for us in this area. So we want to make sure we prioritize pulpwood biomass use, which the BDO zone report speaks to on that. So again, timely report given what we're facing now in our area. So if there's any questions about distinguishing sawmill residues, we're getting by on with Roseburg. Pulpwood, that's an issue now between Espanola, Trenton. Our other markets right now are basically in Quebec. Like we're looking at going as far as Windsor, Quebec. So great distances. Again, I like this slide for the importance of the integration of the forest sector. So on the left, if you picture that as the bush, you see sawmills in the middle, so you have the saw logs going to the mill, but all lines lead, you see pulp, and the thickness of the lines kind of represents proportionally for the Canadian forest industry where stuff goes, but you can see pulp, there's a fairly significant chunk of fiber has to end up there. MDF is up there, small line, but again, fortunate to have an MDF plant in our area so close. You can see the part that ends up in lumber, but again, it's a pulp issue, but that slide really highlights the integration of our sector and how we all can't survive without each other. Mills need other mills to support the contractors, to increase harvesting, and then we all need outlets for all the stuff that doesn't get turned into lumber. I want to speak a little bit to the importance of Algonquin Park to the industry. It's really the heart of the wood supply in all of central Ontario. We've had some challenges there the last few years. We should be up around 600,000 plus cubic meters. I think last year was probably around 320,000 cubic meters. A lot of that has to do with the pulpwood low-grade material issue, less so to the lumber markets. But again, because of the integration, and part of the danger with that is we're constantly under the threat from environmental organizations that would prefer to see logging stopped in Algonquin Park. And they point to, well, your harvest level is down, you don't need that kind of volume, go find the volume outside the park. That is not possible. That volume is not there outside the park. The quality of the wood is tremendous inside the park. And also it's important that we all understand from a sustainability standpoint how important forest management is. People say, well, just don't cut the trees, it'll stay a park like that forever. We know that's not the case. The forest needs to be managed. Humans live on the earth, we need resources to survive. And if we don't manage the park, Mother Nature will manage it for us. And I don't want to say we do a better job than Mother Nature, but we do a more sustainable, more aesthetically pleasing job than fire, wind, disease, and stuff like that. So, and again, like trees are living, they're not going to live forever. Let's capture that carbon and store it before it's released. And again, from a county perspective, anytime you have a chance to support sustainable management in Algonquin Park, it's critical to our sawmill area. Another topic I think is relevant for the people around this table, black ash, endangered species in general. Black ash is kind of the topic of the day, particularly because it just recently, I think it was January, became protected. So on Crown land, we operate under an exemption under the Crown Forest Sustainability Act. I want to stress, so that exemption doesn't mean we don't need to care about black ash. That just means that there's very smart people making scientific-based decisions on how to mitigate the impact to black ash, protect that while at the same time sustainably managing the forest. So, but to my understanding, that doesn't exist yet on private land. And so I think there's an opportunity for municipal pressure to put in place an exemption that we don't need to go through the permit process every single time on private land, to do something sustainable, to look after our roadways, to do any of that, as long as it's done again with care and certain conditions in place. So I guess I should use the term conditional exemption. But again, I think that's a topic that's very relevant to this room. Other endangered species, I'd ask the county to stay engaged on endangered species in general. It's so important. Again, as an industry, we want to protect the species, so that's first and foremost, but that can be done while taking into consideration your economic, your environmental considerations and social considerations. I think a balance can be achieved between all three of those things, but too often, particularly when it comes to endangered species and the way the process works, is somebody declares them endangered, not necessarily on a scientific basis, and then that just starts a process where the economic and social considerations take a back seat, sometimes for years and until the policy catches up. So I just, if the county's looking for ways to support our industry, please stay engaged on these files. Support submissions as policy comes up for review and consideration. Blanding's turtles, eastern wolf is very topical right now too, for a number of reasons, and could have serious impact on our ability to manage the forest. And again, we're just asking for science to take precedence and taking into consideration some of the other issues and factors we face. Can't come here without talking about red pine. Renfrew County is lucky to have a couple of the largest mills producing red pine anywhere in Canada, and there's an abundant supply of red pine in the area, plantations. But again, as with Crown land, I encourage you to continue the good sustainable management taking place, and to make sure we always take a long-term view to forest management, continue the sustainability of it, continue to invest in that future forest and renewing the forest. But it's a tremendous asset and again, we talk about the economic, social, environmental. Again, you have all three of those things that the county can play a role in promoting to the people in the area, and show that all three of those can coexist at the same time. We're facing the same workforce issues any other industry is facing. That's a father-son team right there. So at our mills, for example, we have about 110 direct employees at our mill site, but we have about that many that I would consider full-time contractors, trucking, cutting, harvesting, stuff like that. And actually, as mentioned in the presentation previous, that this vertical integration trend, 15 years ago, we did not own any harvesting equipment, and now we own way more than I would like to own right now. But again, it speaks to that vertical integration and the need to ensure wood supply and stuff like that. I would much rather see a robust pulpwood market, which I believe would lead to more contractors getting back into being independent and creating a more viable economic environment for the contractors. And along that lines too, I have a picture of a truck on there, mainly because I want to bring up the issue of insurance. And for moving forestry products, it's really not economic for a new operator to get insured. They need 3 years of experience, driving experience. How do you get experience transporting forest products if it's cost prohibitive to get the insurance in the first place? So there's issues around insurance, road and weight restrictions. Again, timely with the weather we're having and the early arrival of that. But just I urge you to continue to maintain that position where you're not looking to increase restrictions to roads, but rather maintain or decrease the restrictions to the roads, not just for our industry, whether there's many others that rely on the transportation network, and the weight restrictions. To increase that would be extremely detrimental to our industry in particular. We can work with the system as it's in place right now for the most part, and most municipalities are very good to work with. By just as you continue to upgrade, improve roads and stuff like that, please keep in the back of your mind, if you have a chance to increase having that road be a year-round road, that's something I appreciate keeping in the back of your minds. For ourselves, for our workforce, we're approaching about 20% women in the workforce. So working hard to, at our company, to increase that number and just try to change the perception of our industry in general, and it has, and I think we're getting there. Mills are a lot different than they were 20 years ago. The environment and the machinery and the technology. So again, we're trying to diversify the workforce, and again, any role the county can play in attracting people to the area. So it goes beyond manufacturing and into tourism and infrastructure and everything else, and just property development. Seeing subdivisions go up is great because it allows more people to come into the area. So anything we can do to expedite those processes will help attract people to the area and allow us to grow our workforce. I have noticed a significant change just in the last couple months. I think we went 2 years without a resume, like arriving and advertising and everything else. The last 2 months, that's changed significantly. We can see the rise in unemployment by the number of resumes arriving daily now, and we have hired probably 10 in the last 2-3 weeks, good employees, which in one way is good, but on the other hand, it's just a sign of the direction the economy is currently heading and what we're going to face kind of the next 6 to 12 months on a broader economic scale. I won't go over this in detail, but if I could, I'd just ask if I could leave you one piece of homework. If you could go to the OFIA website, and it's a very concise, short read, the provincial budget submission. I can't do it justice in a few minutes up here, kind of the topics, but it'll really give you a good idea, and I think you'll see a lot of synergies with some of the other issues you're facing on a number of your other files, not even related to forestry, like gets into infrastructure and investment, the cumulative cost of carbon pricing and stuff like that. So that's it's a good read. So that kind of, as an industry, it'll give you a really good snapshot of what we're approaching government with and some of our issues. And I'm sure there's a lot of good overlap and potential to work together on submissions and stuff going forward. So I'll just leave with kind of basically some asks, and to summarize some of the things went over about. I talked about the roads. I talked about Algonquin Park, black ash. There's a recent announcement just this past Friday for the Forest Biomass Fund. So again, if you aren't familiar with it, it's a good fund to get familiar with. You're going to see numerous applications from the county to this new fund. So there was the previous fund of which we were a recipient, but just put it in perspective, that was for, we did not see a cent of that. The announcement was at our place and stuff, but what's exciting for us is we're hoping that through that investment in equipment at Queen's Lab, they're studying the yield from local species for a particular type of biofuel that they're looking to produce at our site, but they needed to just confirm the yield from that. So that money went to lab equipment at Queen's University, whereas this next round of funding going forward the next couple of years will hopefully go towards taking those next steps to turning those results into concrete being poured, whether at our site or another site. So, and that was a very exciting announcement just this past Friday. The forest access road funding, that's a Crown, that's for on Crown land, so may not seem completely pertinent to you, but I just want everyone to be aware of how important that fund is to our industry and sustaining our industry in our area. That it's to share the costs of multi-use forest access roads, so hunting, fishing, tourism, all that stuff. It's in the past we bore the whole cost for that road, whereas now there's a cost-sharing program in place. It's been decreased over the last number of years. We'll see where it ends up at the next budget, but just it's something to be aware of at the municipal level, the importance of that fund. So again, if you hear any of us asking for support for certain initiatives, that might be another area where a letter of support would be great. The Renfrew County Forestry Outreach and Awareness Group, I believe, just met last week. Mike sits on it from our operation. But again, stuff like that, forestry outreach, changing that public perception, speaking of the sustainability of the forests, getting foresters into Algonquin College to speak to the students and getting them out to mill sites, stuff like that. Anything we do as much as we can to support outreach to the best of our ability, and any support from the county to assist in getting that forestry outreach out there. And the county is a member of ROMA, I believe, which again is also a good partner with OFIA. So again, if you see requests coming through from OFIA or ROMA, I ask for your support in giving them due consideration. That's it for my presentation. I just want to, like I said, touch on a few topics that I think are pertinent at the county level to have an awareness of, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Great presentation, and your comment about staying engaged and having the outreach. We're so fortunate at the County of Renfrew to have Lacey Rose, who does such a fantastic job when it comes to species at risk, endangered species, the outreach to the college and other areas even in the province. So I just wanted to mention how much we appreciate having her on staff with the county.
Yeah, I echo that, and it looks good on the county too. I'll be at a meeting in Toronto and it comes up, Renfrew County did this, or Renfrew County offered their views on this. Around the endangered species in particular, going back even 10 years, the county took a lead role at a provincial level, which did not go unnoticed.
So I'll open it for questions from committee. I just had one, and it's in regards to the pulp mill in Trenton. Is it because of the diminished markets for newsprint that that place is shutting down?
I don't want to speak for them. I think partly markets, partly it is an aged asset. And newer assets have more of an ability, I think, to adapt to changing markets. Whereas you take an older asset like that, the ability to transform to a new product or tweak the process, I just don't think that was there, which really led to the decision to permanently close that, as opposed to retooling or revamping.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I see none, so thanks again very much for that presentation.
Oh, thank you.
So at this point, we will move into the development and property report, and I'll turn it over to Director Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee members and our viewing public. I think I see 5 people on the screen today watching our session. And again, thank you for the forestry division and the support we're giving the industry, making sure that we're on top of different things through Lacey Rose, through black ash, through the species at risk, et cetera, et cetera. I think Mr. Heidemann did it justice in the sense of what we're trying to do and support the industry with our outreach and education and the background information that we provide to committee and county council. Moving on to my section of the report, we have 2 information items. On page 7 of your committee package. The first item is the 2024 Development and Property Committee meeting locations. You may recall in 2023, we met at the town of Deep River and at McNabb Braeside offices. So we're offering this again for any municipalities that want to have us engage along with our operations committee because we have it on the same day. Please reach out to myself or Evelyn Van Starkenberg to see if you want to have us at your local office. And I think it's a good opportunity to really see what we're trying to do here at the County of Renfrew and maybe have your local staffs come in and watch the way we do things here at the County of Renfrew. So just please keep that in mind. Item number 2 for Affordable Housing Summit. So we've talked about this a number of times throughout the last number of months. So we have actually firmed up and started the process of a housing summit for April 4th at the new Mattaway Center, now My FM Center, in the town of Renfrew. I think this is a good opportunity for us, the County of Renfrew, to seek information from the developers, not-for-profit organizations, to see how we can assist with our housing crisis we're facing here in Renfrew County and in Ontario and Canada and beyond. So please keep that in mind. April 4th. What you have in front of you is the first draft of the agenda. This will change, probably today will change, but we wanted something out there in front of you just to have this in place to talk about this housing summit. So we have a facilitator, we have the location, and now we're just going to flush out the agenda items as we move forward. And I want to thank the community services staff, ECDEV staff, as we move forward. Again, like the MESA program, this is a collaboration between different departments to make this happen for our housing initiatives. And a number of items you'll see further on in the report about housing items. It's the biggest topic we have right now within the County of Renfrew is housing, unfortunately, actually. So very busy times. Also, just on wasn't part of your committee, but on your desk is another housing summit, the Eastern Ontario Regional Housing Summit. As you see on the handout, May 28th. So again, we're not the only ones looking for housing summits, and we're not the first ones doing this. But the crisis situation we're in justifies the Eastern Ontario Regional Housing Summit, our summit, et cetera, et cetera. So keep that in mind, and please, if you can attend or wish to attend, use this handout for the contact information. And Chair, those are the two information items for now.
Thank you, Director Davis. So we'll go back to information item number 1, the 2024 Development and Property Committee meeting locations. Comments, questions? Seeing none, item number 2 is the Affordable Housing Summit scheduled for April the 4th, 2024 in Renfrew. And I have a question from Creator Madawaska.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Mr. Davis. Is it possible that we can get this in electronic format, that we can distribute it to our developers and anybody interested? Thank you.
And the answer is yes. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, then I will go back to Mr. Davis for bylaws.
Thank you, Chair. Page 8 under bylaws. The rehabilitation of 3 bridges for the Algonquin Trail. As we all know, operations is looking after the maintenance of the Algonquin Trail, and this is one item that was brought to the Trails Committee, I think late last week on Wednesday or Tuesday of last week. And so, Chair, I'll read the recommendation and then I'll give background if necessary. The recommendation is that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council approve contract PWC 2024-11 as submitted by Grand Calumet Construction Incorporated, Luskville, Quebec, for rehabilitation of 3 bridges located on the Algonquin Trail in the area of Garrison, Petawawa, near Duluth Road and Landry Road, town of Laurentian Hills, in the amount of $386,524.31 plus applicable taxes, and further that County Council adopt a bylaw to authorize execution of the contract.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor from Town of Petawawa, seconded by Councillor from Town of Arnprior. And please go ahead with the background.
Thank you, Chair. And just to recognize that Mr. Hanrath is in the building, in the room, if need be any detailed questions about this contract. I can give a brief summary and background. So again, this is one of the last items to do for the completion of the Algonquin Trail through the Garrison lands up to the village of Chalk River. These 3 structures that are currently in place were basically used for snowmobile season, so they have to be upgraded for decking and sides, and one bigger item for the abutments on one of the structures. This is, I think, a big move forward to completion of the trail. So once this is done, along with about 3 or 4 kilometers of the actual trail and stone dust or the gravel for the trail, this will complete the trail from basically Wiley Road all the way through to Smith Falls. So a big accomplishment between the partners of Lanark County and ourselves. And then for the 2024 operations, Taylor and his team are moving this completion, hopefully, I'm looking at Taylor and he's laughing at me, hopefully closer to Stonecliff in 2024 and maybe beyond. And I'll kind of leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Questions or comments? Councillor from Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, this is very exciting news. Like you said, it's a one step closer to realizing, I guess, the dream of going from Mattawa all the way to Smith Falls. Just two questions. The first one is, it came in quite a bit under budget. Is there a reason for that? It's very exciting.
Mr. Hanrath or Mr. Davis, who wants to take
Yeah, for
that?
sure. I'll pass that for Mr. Hanrath if I could, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the councillor from town of Petawawa. There was quite a range of pricings received. It is lower than we were expecting, which is good. From reviewing the company, it looks like they've done some similar work on trail bridges in the past, so we're hoping that it's just, they're hoping to have lower costs due to their expertise.
Thank you. And just in terms of an update on the stone dusting, you said there's still some to be done. So my question is, the piece along Paquette Road and then the entire stretch of the Garrison, has it just been graveled and not stone dusted, those two stretches?
Mr. Hanrath.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the councillor from town of Petawawa. Correct, it has been graveled. Part of the reason that we didn't get as far as we wanted last year was because of these three bridges. One of them in particular, because they can't take full highway loading in their current state. One of them is being upgraded to take highway loading so that we can get gravel between two of the bridges and complete the trail on that section. Once that's done, we would move forward with stone dusting parallel to Paquette all the way through to the Chalk River connection.
One more? I know you may not know the answers to this, but I'm just wondering if there's a potential date in terms of when that gate will open and traffic will start to flow.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the councillor from Petawawa. Unfortunately, it'd be closer to the end of the season just because of the environmental constraints in there, because of the turtle hatching season, and there's widespread turtle habitat in there. We can't necessarily place a lot of gravel unless we've excluded them from the area until October. So we've excluded the bridge areas and the areas that we have to do significant granular B placements and rock placements. But for the actual stone dusting, it would probably be October sometime.
One more. Go ahead.
Sorry. That's still exciting, even though it's going to be October. Still very exciting news. Last question. Has there been any contact with the folks from the Garrison? I know there was some suggestions. There's a little piece between the trail there where the trail hits Paquette Road and the paved portion on the Garrison property that goes to Petawawa River. I know there was some interest from the Garrison in perhaps stone dusting or paving that little piece in conjunction with the county. Has there been any talk about?
Mr. Hanrath.
To my knowledge, that hasn't moved ahead, but we can certainly reach out and see if they're still interested in it.
Councillor from Greater Madawaska.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This is kind of related to this. Just the survey that went out that was distributed for the trails and upgrades, and when is that finished, and when would we might be seeing results of that?
Mr. Hanrath, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the councillor from the Township of Greater Madawaska. So the survey is now complete as of February 29th. We're currently going through the results, and we'd present them at the next meeting of the Trails Advisory Committee, and they would work their way through this committee and to council as well.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And then we'll move on to Ms. Markwood and the Economic Development Division report.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. First up on the economic development report is obviously the bioeconomy development opportunity zone report and rating. And I just wanted to note that in terms of next steps now is the marketing and promotion of that rating and report. So there will be a release of a media release. We will be participating in a public webinar, and then there'll be a dedicated page for Renfrew County built on the BDO zone website. Number 2 on the report is just some recently announced funding programs, the first being the Ontario Seniors Community Grant program, which provides grants from between $1,000 to $25,000 each to support a wide variety of activities that help seniors live independently, ensure their safety and security, and keep them connected with their community and in their homes for longer. This grant is open to not-for-profits who can apply for up to $25,000, as well as individuals who represent seniors groups, and they can apply for up to $10,000. And the deadline for applications is March 28th. The second is the My Main Street program. So that has opened up, and there are 2 streams, one the business sustainability stream and the community activator stream. And those are programs that have been that have supported a number of municipalities, including their downtown communities over the past number of years. The deadline application is March 31st, and projects need to take place between December 1st, 2023 and December 31st, 2024. Number 3 on the report is just some recent community outreach by the economic development team. So we were at the Ottawa Valley Business Summit on February 22nd, at the Canadian Association of Nuclear Host Communities, AGM, and Nuclear Association Conference last week in Ottawa, and as well as the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs Economic Development Summit last week as well. Number 4 is a letter of support for the decision of the Ontario Energy Board to end the gas pipeline subsidy. So just in terms of the history around this, in December of 2023, the Ontario Energy Board released a decision eliminating the gas pipeline subsidy, which was basically an amortization period for the cost of installing new natural gas connections for homes. The elimination of the program would come into effect on January 1st, 2025, and would impact homes, small farms, and businesses. The decision to eliminate the gas pipeline was challenged by the province of Ontario, obviously, and the Minister, Todd Smith, released a statement in December saying that they would be introducing legislation to reverse that. And they have since done so. So the new legislation was introduced to Parliament, to the House on February 22nd. And the legislation is called Keeping Energy Costs Down, which, if passed, would reverse the OEB's decision, preventing an average of approximately $4,400 being added to the price of new homes. And they're also saying that that would increase exponentially into the tens of thousands of dollars for rural homes. The legislation has not yet been passed. It has only been introduced. But since then, the City of Hamilton has passed a resolution supporting the Ontario Energy Board's decision, and they have since passed this around to all municipalities looking for similar support. So we are presenting that as information at this time. Number 5 on the report is just an update on a short-term accommodation meeting that was held on February 21st here at the County of Renfrew, and that was a meeting that was initiated and led by the Township of Laurentian Valley, and was an opportunity just to kind of get the pulse of where other municipalities are at in terms of their proposed regulating of the short-term rental accommodation. Most of the municipalities that are dealing with the issue right now are Laurentian Valley, Greater Madawaska, Whitewater Region, and Madawaska Valley. And so those municipalities will be coming out with decisions as they work through their processes at their councils. And I'll end it for there now, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Markowitz. So we'll go back to information item number 1, which is the bioeconomy development opportunity and the BDO zone report and rating. Comments, questions? Seeing none. Item number 2 is the recently announced funding programs, and that's the Ontario Seniors Community Grant Program. Any questions or comments? And B is the My Main Street program. And then there's are there two separate ones, the business sustainability and the community activator stream? Thank you. Item number 3 is the community outreach. Comments or questions? Item number 4 is a letter of support for the decision of the Ontario Energy Board to end the gas pipeline subsidy. Questions, comments? I see none. Item number 5 is the short-term accommodation meeting. Just a thank you to the county for providing a space to host this meeting, and again, thank you to Laurentian Valley for leading the discussions and certainly some very good information that has come from that. And I'll go back to Ms. Markwood for resolutions, please.
Thank you, Chair. So number 6 on the report, which is found on page 13, is a support for the modernization of Via Rail's long-distance, remote, and regional fleet. So I'll read the recommendation that the Development and Property Committee recommends to County Council that the Warden send a letter to the Honourable Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, and the Honourable Pablo Rodriguez, Minister of Transport, in support of modernizing Via Rail's long-distance, remote, and regional fleet to provide passengers with a more reliable, appropriate, comfortable, sustainable, and accessible travel experience.
Thank you, Ms. Markwood. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor from Greater Madawaska, seconded by Councillor from Horton. And please go ahead with the background.
Thank you. So as we know, Via Rail Canada is Canada's only passenger rail service that operates from coast to coast to coast. And they have been operating since 1977, and they are a Crown corporation. Their fleet that they are using to travel across the country and to get to remote communities is dating back from the 50s and 60s, and so that is aging out. Via Rail has introduced an additional repair program for that fleet. However, despite that, they are citing that certain of their cars will need to be removed from the fleet as of 2032, just because they're ending their engineering life and they won't have the necessary equipment to be maintained. So in July of 2022, Via Rail did submit a business case to the federal government outlining the critical situation and the need for new trains to enter into service within the next 10 years. While they have not received a response yet, they are looking for support from municipalities, businesses that rely on Via Rail to help campaign to the federal government for increased funding to improve and upgrade their fleet. And while we don't have any rail service in Renfrew County, this is a service that is used by many of our residents as well as our businesses, and does pull in quite a number of international visitors who use the Via Rail corridor service between Quebec City and Windsor. And I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Ms. Markwood. I'll open it up to comments or questions. I see none, so I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. So we will go back to Ms. Markwood and the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association report, please.
Thank you. On page, I believe, 96 of the report, the nominations for the Ottawa Valley Tourism Awards are open. There are 6 categories for nomination: the Tourism Champion, Business Organization, Event of the Year, Tourism Marketing Award, Sustainability Champion, and the New Tourism Product Award. Nominations are open until March 25th and can be submitted online via the OVTA website. And the awards will be presented at our tourism conference and annual general meeting on April 16th in Renfrew. Number 2 on the report is applications are open for the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association Board of Directors. So we have 5 vacancies to fill, with 2 directors seeking re-election this year. Applications are open until this Friday, March 8th. And again, the new board will be elected during the AGM on April 16th in Renfrew. Number 3 on the report, although I can't share a copy of the article yet because it is within a subscriber-based magazine, I will be able to share with you hopefully by June. The Ottawa Valley was featured in a 6-page spread in the recent issue of Ottawa Outdoors magazine, highlighting the areas of Round Lake, Bark Lake, and Golden Lake as prime fishing areas. And also as a bonus feature, one of our local fishing operators, Algonquin Fly Fishing from Petawawa, was also featured for their fly fishing activities that they do on the Ottawa River. So that was a really nice feature. So if you're a subscriber or a member of Ottawa Outdoors, you will receive that magazine, and it will be available for purchase on newsstands shortly. And we hope to be able to share a copy of the actual article in the next couple months. And I'll end it for there.
Thank you, Ms. Markwood. So going back to information item number 1, the nominations for the Ottawa Valley Tourism Awards. It's a reminder to, if you have somebody in mind, to please get that nomination in. Item number 2 is the applications which are open for the Board of Directors for the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association. Questions, comments? Seeing none, item number 3 is the Ontario Out of Doors magazine and the fishing feature. Again, another great example of putting Renfrew County on the map. And we'll go back to resolutions, and Ms. Markwood, please.
Thank you. The resolution is for the 2024 Ottawa Valley Tourist Association draft budget. The recommendation is that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council adopt the OVTA draft 2024 budget as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Markwood. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor from Greater Madawaska, seconded by Councillor from McNabb-Braeside. And background?
Thank you. So this is the last step in the approval of the OVTA budget. As we are within a tri-partnership agreement with the City of Pembroke and the County of Renfrew, the budget process includes draft budget approved by the board in the fall. It then goes to City of Pembroke for their approval, and that was completed at their last meeting in February. And then the last step is the budget goes through Development of Property to County Council for final approval. So this is where we're at, just in that last final step for approval.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions or comments in regards to the budget? I see none. So I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. And that brings us back to Ms. Markwood for the Enterprise Renfrew County report.
Thanks again. So number 1 on the Enterprise Renfrew County report is just community outreach and promotion. So on February 29th, staff attended Algonquin College's Community Resource Fair, which is always a great event to help promote the Starter Company Plus and Summer Company programs. Staff was able to interact with approximately 120 students, with a couple of them already signing up for some of our programs, so that's great. As well as recruitment is happening for the Summer Company program, which is the youth entrepreneurship program. So staff have outreached to all of the educational institutions and school boards across Renfrew County to present the information in their classes. And we've already had, actually as of today, 5 schools take on that invitation. And the deadline to apply for the Summer Company program is May 15th. Second item on the report is just some workshops and events. There was the tax preparations and HST webinars that were held in February that had approximately 12 participants in attendance. Up this month is the Francophone Networking Breakfast and Entrepreneur Award this coming Friday in Pembroke. And there's also a legal boot camp session coming up on March 12th that can help entrepreneurs decide on their appropriate level of business registration, whether looking at sole proprietorship, registered corporations, or that type of thing. And then there is a Business Growth Accelerator webinar being held on March 14th. And that concludes my ERC report.
Thank you once again, Ms. Markwood. And going back to information item number 1, the community outreach and promotion. Questions or comments? Seeing none, item number 2 is the workshops and events. Seeing no questions or comments, then we will move on to Ms. Rose and the forestry report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The forestry report is on page 100 of your committee package. We'll start with some information items. First up, some outreach activities and updates. We did have a meeting on February 22nd with a number of forest sector organization industry representatives, about 30 people in attendance in person and online, to discuss how we can work together for public and student outreach and education. This group has been meeting since 2015 with a couple year hiatus for obvious reasons, but we're back in business, and we heard from a lot of existing programs from other organizations that hopefully more people can take advantage of locally here. We also made our plan for 2024 for a number of local tours for students and actions that we can work together on. So it's good to have that collaboration. And a need was still identified from the sector participants for local outreach to the public and students, which you also heard from Chris earlier today. The second item is just information that I did present at the Forest Ontario conference on February 28th in Vaughan. It was in a forest history section, actually, and sharing some stories about the settlement impacts on our Renfrew County forest. Lots of neat and interesting remains and stories have been collected over the years, with much more to know. So it was lots of interest in hearing about our Renfrew County forests in that section. Item C is just appendix attached, outlining an invite to myself to participate in a roundtable discussion on increasing representation for women in the forest sector, and that is on March 19th with the Associate Minister of Women's Social and Economic Opportunity and the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry. Information item number 2 is just an update on activities in the Renfrew County Forest. So we do have 3 harvest operations underway as of today. I imagine that some of them have probably wrapped as of the weather today, and there's a little bit of scrambling to try to get things done before we really see spring continuing. I guess winter's over now, so that's just an update for you. A verbal update that's not in your package is just on the black ash theme that we've talked about at almost every meeting for the last, who knows how long, 2 years. The Ontario Woodlot Association did write a supportive letter for the conditional exemption on private land in cooperation with messaging that we've written and some others have. So they have asked for our support in submitting that letter also. So I just wanted to provide you with that update, and I will pause there.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. We'll go back to information item number 1 in the outreach activities, and item A. Item B. Yes, Councillor from Greater Madawaska.
Yes. Through you, Chair. I was wondering, would you be able to share that presentation with us? Because I'd like to read through it.
Through you, Chair. I could share it. It's mostly pictures. So without me telling the stories for context.
That's perfect for me.
Okay, I will share that.
Thank you for that. Any other comments and questions on B? Seeing none, item C. And I guess just as a follow-up, it was very encouraging to hear Chris Heiderman say that the workforce has certainly been changing in his mill with more women being part of the team. And also the fact that he's now receiving more applications for some of the ongoing vacancies. I think that's good news. And I certainly do appreciate once again the work, Lacey, that you have done for the county and especially for promoting opportunities for women in the forest industry. Item number 2 is the activities on Renfrew County Forest. Comments or questions? Seeing none, then I will go back to you, Ms. Rose, for resolutions.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 3 is an update and resolution on the tract renaming initiative. So I'll read the recommendation first. That the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council direct staff to request a meeting with Norm Lemke, Ontario Municipal Liaison and Ontario Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, for an update on the agreement in principle and the communications process.
Thank you for that. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor from Town of Petawawa, seconded by Councillor from Town of Barnprior. And background, please.
So this is going back to 2022. It was recognized that the Indian River Tract of the Renfrew County Forest should be renamed in the spirit of reconciliation. This was discussed on February 8th, 2022 at the Development and Property Committee. A resolution was passed directing staff to engage with the Algonquins of Ontario to review the Indian River Tract name and request possible new names. Later that month, a request was made by Warden Robinson at the time to the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan First Nation to propose alternative names for the tract. Since then, several follow-ups have occurred, and recent discussion has occurred with some councillors of the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan First Nation. It's been communicated by those councillors that staff of the community, knowledge keepers, and language specialists will be required for this consultation, and there is an associated cost for this and any other consultation. Just a bit of a background, in all previous consultations for activity on the Renfrew County Forest, including our last forest management plan finalized in 2017, communication about forest values and seeking assistance for updating signage, other items as they arise, we've always consulted with the Algonquins of Ontario office, and that's been following the process that happens on Crown land for forest management consultation. It's now been communicated by the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan First Nation that any consultation should occur separately from now on, and consultation is expected on all activities that occur on Renfrew County forests, and there would be a cost associated with all staff time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Comments or questions? I see. Well, I just have one, and obviously this is a change, and if we're having to consult with the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan First Nation on every occasion, do we still have to consult with the Algonquins of Ontario?
Through you, Chair, and thank you very much for the question. And so this is the process we're working out. So a two-prong approach. So if there's costs associated with consultation, whether it's through AOO or the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan First Nation, we have to budget for this. We didn't do that this year for these items. We'll do that for 2025 budget cycle. And that's why we have this recommendation in front of you for the what is our proposed next steps for communication with both groups. So I think it's the timing is good for this. Talking with CAO Craig Kelly, we haven't had an update from the province regarding the agreement in principle. So with this in relation to the agreement in principle, a good timing portion. Thanks, Chair.
And just as a follow-up, do we know what those consultation costs are, or does it vary with every request?
Through you, Chair. So it does vary with every request. I do know through our Trails Committee and with Public Works, each request is different. It all depends on the scope of what's needed on their end. So it can range from a small amount to a large amount.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. And back to you, Director Davis. Back to you, Ms. Rose.
Okay, the next recommendation I will read, it's regarding another pulp mill closure. So the recommendation is that Development and Property Committee recommends to the County Council that a letter of support be sent under the Warden's signature to the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry and the Premier's Office for biomass initiatives that can benefit the wood basket of Renfrew County mills, and further, that staff continues to be engaged and support the forest sector on any biomass project possibilities in our area, and further, that this issue be raised at any appropriate delegation opportunity.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor from Town of Petawawa, seconded by Councillor from Laurentian Valley. And background, please.
We were fortunate to hear about this from both of our delegations today, so I won't go into too much detail in the background, but I do feel like it's important to state that this is a very serious problem for the mills of Renfrew County. With the closure of the Trenton Mill, that is the last major destination for pulpwood that is within any reasonable distance. The few remaining pulp mills will feel additional pressure and will be unlikely to take all of the material for our area. So this is crisis management mode at this time. Some harvest areas with high pulpwood volumes will have to be bypassed, meaning sawmills will have less available sawable material to their mill. It's just more and more complex, and also means a less sustainably managed forest, areas that will just have to die of natural causes and fall down and decompose and release that carbon. So also the challenging workforce, being less able to attract entrants and making it less viable to invest in new equipment, all issues that Chris was sharing with us. No forest sector can be viable without a market for this low-end material. More than 6,000 people in Renfrew County make a living from the forest sector and are dependent on this activity. Local industry and government reports point to biomass being the solution to this excess pulpwood problem. And as Chris shared, he and 2 other local mills were recipients of funding to explore possibilities for local biomass facilities. More funding has recently been announced, and we hope to see projects with shovels and grounds come to Renfrew County. And just to sum up, the BDO report will indicate to potential investors that there is that quality and quantity of low-end material available for biomass projects in this area. We already know this, but the report quantifies and gives a rating for readiness. So we just need to make sure that we are all able and willing to shout that message from whatever opportunity we get. Thank you.
Thank you for the background. Comments or questions? See none, and hopefully we get some interest once this BDO proposal goes out to some of the investors, because Renfrew County can certainly use it. All in favor? Thank you, that's carried. And now we'll move to the Real Estate Division report, and Mr. Raditz, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the committee. The Real Estate report can be found on page 104 in your package. So information item number 1, again, is just the attached appendix of the projects that will be happening this year in the real property portfolio. As you can see, there's going to be considerable activity again at the Renfrew County Place. The current one current carryover project being the HVAC rooftop replacements. That's in progress and actually will be completed probably this week. The second carryover project pertaining to the roofing, we anticipate that's going to start in April, and with Mother Nature cooperating with us, that's probably is going to happen. Item number 2, again, is just an update on the new build at Lee Street. And as you can see, the overall project, we're probably at about 70%, maybe closer to 75%. The last couple of months, the contractor has been concentrating on the interior work. And I think we should be on target to have that project completed in May. And anytime, if you're up at the west end of the city of Pembroke, I'd encourage you to drop by in that area, and you can see the project for yourself. It's going relatively well. Item number 3 is the update for the paramedic base in Eganville, and Tina's just going to pull up a couple of pictures. Recently, that has been posted on the for Zen City. And again, that project is going well, and we're currently at about the overall completion. We're at about 60% completion, and we anticipate we're going to be on target to have that building functional and operational sometime in June. Yeah, so that's going relatively well, and as you can see in a couple of the pictures. Currently, the work is pertaining to the upper and lower levels. You can see the pictures there of some drywall being completed. The next phase of the project will be tendering for the mechanical and electrical portion of the project. And Chair, I'll just pause there.
Thank you, Mr. Raditz. And going back to Information item number 1, the real estate capital and capital under threshold projects. Comments or questions? Item number 2 is the 1030 Lee Street new build. Yes, Councillor from Town of Artprior.
Thank you, Chair. Kevin, I see that the authorized changes to date are $165,000. Do we foresee any more expenses that'll be authorized in that we're at 70% and 80%? Thanks.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, thank you for that question. We hope not. But also, just to note, it does indicate $165,000. There is, we did have, if you recall, we did have $44,000 in savings, so that would be subtracted from that $165,000.
Any other comments or questions? So item number 3 is the Eganville Paramedic Base Progress Report. Questions, comments? Great to see this moving forward, and we look forward to the open house once it's all done. And back to you, Mr. Raditz, for resolutions.
Thank you, Chair. The resolution, I'll read the recommendations for the storage shed at the Renfrew County Place. Recommendation that the Development and Property Committee approves contract RE 2024-03-RP for the construction of an emergency service storage shed at Renfrew County Place, 450 O'Brien Street, Renfrew, Ontario, as submitted by Stephen & Sons Construction Incorporated, Douglas, Ontario, in the amount of $128,600 plus applicable taxes, and further that an agreement be executed for the contract.
Thank you for the recommendation. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor from Greater Madawaska, seconded by Councillor from McNabb Braeside. And background, please.
The background, so we did issue a tender for the construction of the shelter, the storage shelter at RCP. There was a mandatory site meeting, and we did have a good turnout. And as you can see, there was seven contractors that submitted some bids, and one was rejected. And of course, the lowest bid being $128,600 by Stephen & Sons Construction. So our staff is pretty confident. Well, we are confident that the project will be completed on time. And as you can see, there is ample funds within the budget to support this bid.
Thank you, Mr. Raditz. Are there any comments or questions? It's really good to see that we're attracting more bids, and that's encouraging. So I'll call a question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And now we'll move to Planning Division report, and Mr. Howarth, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. A number of information items are first. The report can be found on page 107 of the committee's package. The first is with regards to a GIS update. So back in 2022, the County of Renfrew, with the help of a modernization grant, purchased Esri ArcGIS software. And this was under an enterprise license agreement, or an ELA. And what this provided was an unlimited use of the Esri product. So instead of having to buy individual licenses for every person in the organization who may have used that, in addition, local municipalities were purchasing their individual licenses. What the purchase of this ELA did was give us access to a whole bunch of additional software packages and also unlimited licenses for both us and local municipalities. So just recently, we did send out an email to all local municipalities encouraging them to explore the numerous possibilities for utilizing these tools, and we gave a couple of information examples. And these tools can be used for a variety of things, including public works, planning, tourism, asset management, tracking inspections of licensed items, such as it could be complaints, dog tags, short-term rentals, trailers, and the list goes on to all the different ways that we can use this piece of software. And hopefully next committee package for April, we'll be able to provide an example of a dashboard app that we're creating to look at how Renfrew County has been building, where are we building our dwellings throughout the municipality. There was also an example there of how Armpire has been using it, just one of the quick capture apps, tracking sidewalk cracks and how they've been repaired. And this is a great time for municipalities to sort of be able to use some of these apps as summer students are coming into the area, and a good way to utilize them is going out and using these tools to track and gather data. Looking ahead to 2025, this is when our 3-year agreement is going to expire. And as I said earlier, this originally was purchased using a grant. We won't have those, or we may have a grant, but at this point we're not counting on a grant, and so we will have to look at financing for working with all of the 17 municipalities to ensure that we can continue using this enterprise license agreement. And so GIS staff have been going out and providing training opportunities for local municipalities. So upon request, we have been going out to various our partners, and hopefully again in April we're going to be looking to host a introduction to GIS, or a GIS 101 here at the County of Renfrew building, where we'll invite municipalities and those users who may not have a lot of knowledge of how to use some of these tools to the county building and provide that level of training. Item B is in accordance with the corporate policy of procurement goods and services, we did enter into a non-competitive purchase of the ESRI Advantage program. So this has been related to a previous committee information item with regards to we're going to be needing to look at the future of our online web program. The current software that our system is using is set to expire, and we are looking at a variety of options. So whether that is continuing with outsourcing the hosting of that website, or whether or not we can host that internally here using our ELA program, is something that we're going to be looking at, but we need some assistance with that. So this money and going to ESRI, this was part of that go towards hiring I think they call them an architect or an IT architect to look at what would it take to bring this in-house, what do we need to purchase, any hardware such as servers, and essentially what will the cost of that be, and would that result in a cost savings or a better service ultimately. So we have hired ESRI and entered this Advantage program, and we'll be using these tools for a number of projects looking forward. Number 2, staff attended a webinar from the Independent Electric Service or Systems Operator, IESO, with regards to meeting future demands of Ontario's energy needs. It was a very interesting proposal. The province has changed rules and regulations with regards to energy projects. First, they were subject to municipal approvals. Then there was an amendment to the Green Energy Act, which eliminated the need to have any municipal approvals for these projects. And now that has been repealed, and projects such as wind, solar, battery storage, all these type of green alternative sources of energy are now subject again to municipal approvals. So there's a webinar just talking about these processes. There is a push to add 2,000 megawatts of energy by 2030 to the grid, as they call them non-emitting sources. So those are the wind, solar, biomass, storage, whether it's battery and hydroelectric projects, to the grid. And again, these are subject to municipal approvals. During the webinar, there was also quite a bit of discussion with regards to the provincial position on these types of uses being located in prime agricultural land. And in short, I'll keep it brief, these energy projects should not be within those prime agricultural areas. So they are promoting these to be in rural areas or areas. And just as a last note, after that presentation, we thought it would be a good idea to almost have like a State of the Union presentation for how is our capacity and what does the grid look like for Renfrew County. We have heard rumblings that the grid is nearing capacity and can be acting as sort of there's coming up to a point where it could impact future development. And so we'll be reaching out to IESO in the future to see if we can find somebody who would be willing to come talk to us about just the State of the Union for energy capacity and distribution within our area. Item number 3 is an update with regards to County of Renfrew Official Plan Amendment number 44. This is a county implemented amendment. This is as a result of some of the print editions of media shutting down. The Planning Act requires planning notices to be placed in a lot of print media. And so with the shutting down of some of these paper-based newspapers, several municipalities can't actually meet those Planning Act requirements for circulation within the paper. The Planning Act does provide that you can do alternative notice provisions, but you have to have those policies specifically put in the official plan, and that's what this official plan amendment is going to do. We have reached out to the local municipalities with a draft of the proposed amendment, and so far we haven't had any concerns or comments. So we have a draft of this wording, and that we will be hosting the required public meeting here on April 9th. That's the next committee meeting. So at the start of next DMP meeting, we will start with a public meeting to meet our Planning Act obligations. Item number 4 is another information item that we did approve the Town of Deep River Official Plan number 6. This was a change to one of their policies to allow for partial servicing of a plan of subdivision. So the new policies are proposed that will allow development to be serviced by municipal water, but then have individual private septic systems instead of being connected to the municipal wastewater plant. And we are working with the developer now. They're looking at submitting that plan of subdivision and preparing the supporting studies for that. So thank you, Chair. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howarth. We'll go back to information item number 1, the GIS update. Looking forward to that information session for the lower tiers. And item B of item number 1, the procurement of goods and services. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, item number 2 is the independent electricity system operator presentation. Comments, questions? Seeing none, item number 3 is the County of Renfrew Official Plan Amendment and the alternate notice provisions. Finally, item number 4 is the Town of Deep River Official Plan Amendment, number 6 on OPA 6. Comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll go back to you, Mr. Howarth, for bylaw.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with the recommendation. The recommendation is that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council adopt a bylaw to delegate authority for sharing GIS data with corporations to the GIS coordinator.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor from Town of Petawawa, seconded by Councillor from McNabb-Braeside. And background, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm sure many committee members are familiar with the mapping GIS and navigation apps that are out there these days, whether it's on your phone or a lot of times it's connected right into your cars now. But so Google or Waze or these other community maps, they require good data to feed into their systems to help with these navigation purposes. So to ensure that these routes and navigations are accurate, they need us to provide updates to them. So recently, these companies have been requesting that the data be provided in a manner that is clear, that is coming from a person who has the authority to bind the corporation, or that they're authorized to share this information, and that these corporations can also, they are free to share them and without any confidentiality or copyright concerns. So instead of bringing every request from one of these companies to either committee or the chief administrative officer, we are recommending that this role and this authorized delegation be provided to the GIS coordinator. And we have reviewed this proposed bylaw with the clerk and IT manager. So the authority would include to determine the specific GIS data to be shared with those corporations, ensure the safe transfer of that data, taking into consideration compliance with any privacy or protection laws, enter into any agreements or contracts with those corporations governing the sharing of the GIS data, and to monitor the use of any shared data by the corporations and take appropriate measures to address any concerns or issues that may arise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Howarth. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor from Greater Madawaska.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm just wondering, Google, Waze, different platforms, our corporations, are we receiving any remuneration for staff time to prepare this for them?
Thank you, through you, Chair, to the councillor. No, we don't. This is a service that we're trying to provide for their, so we think it does provide value to our residents to have those good navigation services available, and also to any tourists or any other visitors to our area. So, but the short answer is no, we are not compensated for this.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. And I'll then need a mover and a seconder to adopt the report as a whole. Moved by Councillor from Town of Petawawa, seconded by Councillor from Greater Madawaska. Any comments or questions on the report as a whole? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Is there any new business? Seeing none, we do have a closed meeting today, but before we go into closed, I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break and come back at 11:25. Thank you and welcome back. We will now be moving into closed and it will be pursuant to Section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act for a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor from Petawawa, second by Councillor from Town of Arnprior. All in favor? Thank you very much. We are enclosed. Thank you and welcome back. We are now back in open, and we are at item number 10, which is adjournment. So I'll need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Moved by Councillor from Town of Petawawa, seconded by Councillor from Town of Arnprior. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned. The date of the next meeting will be Tuesday, April the 9th, 2024.